Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch podcast. Join us on our journey as we recap, examine, and critique the series episode by episode from the beginning.
We'll be keeping our podcast spoiler free, so we welcome fans, new and old, to join us in watching and reflecting on one of our favorite shows. Currently, we're on season 4,
I'm your host, Jess Sabanko.
and I'm your host, Mia Sabanko.
Now let's get into this week's episode. This week, we're discussing season 4, episode 5, Size Matters. It originally aired on October 25th, 2001, and had 5.29 million viewers.
All right, so let's get right into this episode. We start off at P3, and we see Piper is walking through with Treat, who is this guy that she hired as a new manager. He's suggesting some changes to the club. Piper says that she thought it would be more gradual and that she doesn't want to shock the regulars with all these changes. And then Treat says, "Well, I do. Your place seems too safe. Now, do you trust me? Do you trust the #1 club promoter in all of San Francisco?" She's like, "Yes, of course." And he's like, "Good. All right. Then guys, rip it all out." And Phoebe walks in and says to Piper, "Wait a minute, what's going on? That's our table. Who told them they could rip out our table?" And Treat's like, "I did." Phoebe's like, "Well, who are you?" And then Piper introduces him as the new manager, and Phoebe asks to talk to her alone. And Piper's like, "You look worried, baby girl." And Phoebe's like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" And Piper tells her that it just happened yesterday, which is why she had her come down there today. And Phoebe said that we said we weren't going to do this, make any major changes in our lives. All the books caution against it. After you've suffered a major loss, do not sell the house, do not get married, do not quit your job. And Piper's like, "Okay, but like it or not, there's been a lot of changes lately, and this is hardly the biggest." And that's when Paige walks in, and Phoebe's like, "Speak of the devil slash white lighter slash witch." And then Paige says she hopes she's not interrupting and tells them that she has a question, but that it can wait. And Piper's like, "I was just explaining to Phoebe that the changes I'm making in the club are not by choice, they're by necessity." And she says that P3 has been struggling a little bit lately, and we are now a single salary household. And Phoebe's like, "Well, we don't have to be. I can get a job." And Piper says, "And if you could get a part-time entry-level job that pays about 200 grand a year, that would really make a difference. Otherwise, I'd rather you be free for our other work." And Paige says about that other work, and they just kind of keep ignoring her. And Phoebe's like, "But it's not fair. You shouldn't carry the financial burden." And Piper says, "I will worry about the source of our income if you worry about the source of all evil." And Paige says, "Speaking of evil," and Piper's like, "Besides, what kind of job would you get?" Phoebe's like, "I'm a college grad. I'm sure I could find something." And Paige is like, "I found something." And Piper's like, "Okay, Paige, what is it?" And she starts talking about this house that she walks by every day that gives her a shiver. And she's wondering if it could be something supernatural. But the only thing she knows about it is that this cute guy named Finn lives there, who she's flirted with at the store before. And Piper says, "That sounds like you have the hots, not the creeps." And Phoebe says that she should stay away from him either way. And Paige is like, "I don't get the shiver from him, just the house." Then Piper dismisses her concerns and leaves. And Paige says, "Phoebe, I'm not making this up." And Phoebe's like, "I know, sweetie, but you've got to admit, it's not a lot to go on." Then Phoebe says that she needs to go and tells Paige to remember to stay away from that Finn guy.
All right. So I guess let's start from the beginning of this scene. Treat, awful.
I
So
know.
bad.
I hate him
Gives me the
already.
ick right away. Like the second he's on the screen and he's like, "Don't you trust the #1 promoter?" First of all, the second when you refer to yourself as the #1 of something, I know you're just like,
A bullshitter.
yes.
This like high energy, like, oh god, I don't know, just trying way too hard, I feel like, and it comes off just really gross to listen to.
No, literally. And the fact that like his job relies on like being up on like what the hottest trend is, but he's like a 40-year-old man. Like, I'm sorry, but what 40-year-olds think is cool is not cool.
Exactly. That's some like peaked in high school type shit.
No, literally.
Not loving it.
But
And you can tell even Piper's not loving it, but she just feels like, I guess I gotta do something.
Exactly. And it sucks to see that P3 is struggling, which I guess then brings us to kind of like the Phoebe of it all and Phoebe offering to get a job. So, first of all, Piper bringing up this whole like, oh, like if you could get a part-time job making 200 grand a year. Are you telling me that Prue was making 200 grand as a part-time freelance photographer? Like, be fucking for real. That's not accurate.
Exactly. And first of all, how much is the club making? 200 grand a year would make a difference. Like, what does that mean? Like, how much is Piper making that she's able to cover that? Like, what? I don't
No,
understand.
one, there's no way the club is making that amount money, like that amount of money. Two, this is 2001.
Yeah,
So 200 grand then would be like 400 grand now almost. Not literally, but it would be a lot more than like, because 200 grand today is kind of like a very middle class. Back then, though, it would have been upper class to be making 200 grand a year. So it's kind of like, what?
exactly. This does not make any sense at all. Even if Phoebe was bringing a little bit of money to the table, that would help. Like, it doesn't doesn't quite add up.
But I do get what she's saying about like wanting Phoebe to focus on demons if Piper can carry it financially, but like it just the amount was so insanely out there that it was like, come on.
I
Like,
know. That was a bit excessive, I'd say.
and also like you could sell your mansion if you really needed money that badly. I'm just saying.
Yeah, seriously. Like they have a goddamn fortress. Other than that, the page of it all. I love this like kind of energy we're getting where it's like she's trying to fit in and say her side and become a part of this, but like it's not as easy for them to accept it. I guess I can see that being like an issue that they have to face as becoming new sisters. You know, Paige used to being on her own and Piper and Phoebe used to having Prue there instead of Paige. You can see there being lots of difficulties and butting of heads.
Yeah. And this whole like them being dismissive of her and like what she's sensing, they used to do that to Prue all the fucking time too. And I was just like, wow, this is bringing me back to season one. Even
Mhm.
season three, they were dismissing Prue sometimes. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And like, poor Paige, she's just like trying to get a word in, and they're like, no, no, no. Talk
Yeah,
about our thing.
moving on.
Exactly.
Poor girl. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this thin guy comes into play and if this house really is a problem.
I don't know. I feel like the episode just ends here.
Yeah, probably. Probably doesn't go further than that.
So then we go to the creepy house and we see Finn and this blonde woman pull up on a motorcycle. And she's creeped out by the house, but he tells her that it's nicer inside and they should go in. They go inside and it is definitely not any nicer than it was on the outside. And they try to turn on the lights, but they don't work. And she's talking about how she has this bad feeling. And he's like, hang on, like, I'm gonna go check the circuit breaker. And we see there's like holes in the wall. Like, there's kind of like these pieces of wood that you could see out of. It's like really, I don't know, like, I don't even know how to describe it.
It's just
Disgusting.
it's like an abandoned house.
Yeah, that's like had construction that like never got finished.
Mhm.
And there's this like creepy old man watching her from through the hole in the wall. And she like notices something, but then like he runs away and she's looking around. And then all of a sudden he like comes out and hits her with a bolt of electricity that comes out of this like wand thing that he's holding and she screams.
Yes, so interesting start. Now we can tell that this is obviously going to be the theme of the episode, and that Paige was correct about her theory.
Yes, exactly. There is something
Mhm.
creepy about this house.
Yeah, and this Finn guy luring people in.
Mm-hmm.
And also, who is this creepy old man?
Yes, I have many questions that I hope the episode will answer for me at some point.
Agreed. So then we have the theme song, and then we move back to the creepy house, and we're inside, and we see the old man from before is making a clay doll of this woman, like stuck screaming. And outside, we see Finn leave on his motorcycle, while Paige is standing across the street staring at the house, and then she crosses her arms and like shivers at it. I guess we can put that on intuition that she feels like there is something, but like looking at that house, you guys, I think anyone would be like, yeah, that's fucking creepy.
No, literally.
Like,
When I was younger, in one of the places we lived, there was a house like a little bit down the road that like Ashley and I would walk past on like when we were walking home from school. And it was like, it wasn't that creepy as this house, but it was pretty creepy. And it had like all vines and stuff growing on it. And I would like get that type of feeling about it. And I was always like, ugh. But I
yeah.
don't think there was a clay doll, whatever's going on here situation going on there. At least I hope not.
I mean, you never know. Paige could have been across the street watching. um, yeah, no, I had that same situation, except there was like a whole legend behind that house. The house that was like right down the road from me, where my friend Maddie and I used to walk past, and it looked the same way, all beaten down, vines growing on it and everything. But the guy that lived there, his wife died, and everybody thinks that he killed her.
Oh
So
my
it was
God.
yeah, it was an interesting. I remember there was like one time that we saw him outside, and we were like little kids, and it was just like that, like it was just like a movie where like he looks at you like, and you're like, and run
Yeah.
away, you know? Like, I swear to God.
I
Yeah, no,
love like
but
neighborhood legends like that. Like it's always so interesting. And especially like since it's always somehow like kids that know about them and it's like how the fuck did we know about this?
exactly. Like, where did it come from? Oh, but it's funny. Aside from that, not too much to say there. Definitely looking forward to seeing how the charmed ones get involved in this.
Exactly. So then we cut to this like job interview and there's a blonde woman who's sitting at a desk across from Phoebe and she's like, "If I'm reading this correctly, you were 27 years old when you finished college?" And Phoebe's like, "Yes, I just graduated last spring." I have some questions about this.
Mhm.
So, how did Phoebe age 5 years in 3 years? And how is Paige 24? And Phoebe is 1.5 years older than Paige, but 27.
How are they not a little more consistent with this?
Yeah, like it doesn't fucking make any sense. And they also very clearly put like Phoebe was born November 2nd, 1975, which would make her in 2001 almost 26.
Right. What the hell?
So, what
That
they
makes
have
no
no idea
sense.
how old these fucking girls are ever.
There's no logic in it at all.
And my other question, you can't ask someone how old they are in an interview. So how the fuck does she know how old Phoebe is or how
Yeah.
old she was when she finished college? Like it's just like,
Who
and
puts
also
that in
who
their
would even
resume?
ask that? Who asks that?
And why would it be in the resume? Like, oh, it says right here in your resume that you were 27 years old when you finished college. No one's ever going to be like, hey, like, so I worked at a couple different places, finished college at almost 30. Like, what? Who's going to put that in their resume like that?
Like it's just so outlandish. And then she goes, "That certainly took a while." Like, bitch,
Like, what the
relax.
hell does it matter? Nobody acts like that. I love how dramatic this show has to be sometimes.
And then Phoebe's like, "Oh, I had to take a break after my freshman year. Personal reasons." And she's like, "Would you care to elaborate?" And Phoebe's like, "Not really." She's
Yeah.
like, during the holidays, things get pretty hectic around here. We need people who can handle tense situations." And Phoebe's like, "Oh, believe me, I am uniquely qualified to handle any type of pressure. I have battled more customer complaints than you could possibly ever imagine." And the woman doesn't really seem convinced. She's like, "I see you also noted that you may require a flexible work schedule." And Phoebe says, "I'll put in the hours, I promise. It's just sometimes I may have to leave unexpectedly." And she's like, "Would you care to elaborate?" And Phoebe's like, "No, not really." She's like, "I see." And Phoebe's like, "But it's not what you're thinking." She's like, "How do you know what I'm thinking?" Phoebe's like, "Oh, I don't know what you're thinking. I just know whatever you're thinking. It's not it." And she's like, "So you're not going to tell me?" And Phoebe's like, "No."
I feel like this whole interview went completely different than a normal interview would go at all.
No, literally. Like, it's not that uncommon for someone to like leave college for a little while, go back. It's really inappropriate to like keep pressuring to ask why. Like, you're not supposed to ask, right? So that's number one. And if you do, and they're like, oh, it was for personal reasons, like, I feel like I would assume that it was something like a death or like something bad
Yeah,
happened in their life. And I'd be like, oh, okay, like, let's move on. You know what I mean? Like, I
right.
wouldn't keep pressing on it like that.
Absolutely. That wouldn't question me like, oh, care to elaborate? Fucking no, I'm not gonna ask you to tell me your whole life story. It's
Yeah,
none of my
like, let you
business.
just trauma dump on me during an interview. Sounds good.
Yeah, like what the fuck? And like the whole her having to leave unexpectedly, I feel like she could have worded it a little bit differently. Like, you didn't have to say it like that. Like, hey, I may need some flexible hours. I'm dealing with some personal issues at home that, I may need to have some time off sometimes,
Yeah.
things like that. And if this is like, what is this? Like some sort of assistant position? I don't even,
It seems like it's some type of part-time retail position, which I feel like they don't ask this many questions. Like, you go for a job like that, like say I was applying for a job like at a store that was part-time, they kind of just like are, do you have work experience?
will let you know. Yeah, like that's
Like, they're not like digging this much into what you're doing. Phoebe could even say like, oh, like I'm in grad school, so I need flexible hours. Like, make something up, Phoebe.
exactly anything, because they're not gonna question it. They're not gonna like look into it.
Exactly. Like, make something up. Be like, oh, like I have to take care of my niece or nephew. So sometimes things come up unexpectedly and I may have to leave. You know what I mean? Like, just make something up.
Exactly. It would
Like, it's a
not be this
part-time position.
difficult.
It's not like a full-time job where you're asking for flexible hours. They should be willing to work with you on something like that.
Yeah, it genuinely should not be this difficult at all.
But yeah, I'm also very confused about what this job is because, like, again, they're like in an office building. They're talking about customers. It's a part-time job. I really don't know what she's applying for.
Me neither.
I still
I
also don't know what Phoebe's degree is in either. Like,
Yeah, I thought it was some sort of like psychology thing, but I don't know. I guess a little bit of everything. But yeah, no, I feel like this scene was just not super important to the episode at the moment. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie, even towards the end, I don't see what this had any relevance to.
I think it was really just trying to establish the idea of like Phoebe feeling badly for depending on Piper and putting so much on Piper, who I think she's already seen struggling so much this season. And so she wanted to take some of that burden if she could, but also realizing that her destiny as a charmed one and kind of taking on that main witchy role is going to affect her trying to have a career, even though she did go back to school and she did kind of like try to make these advancements in that part of her life. She still may have a hard time with her goals because of magic.
Right, exactly. Also, where the hell is Cole?
I was thinking the same thing. And like, slight spoiler, he's not in the next episode either. And I'm like, why did he just fall off the face of the earth?
I don't get it what they do with him.
Yeah, and I feel like when I've like watched it in the past, I didn't think about it as much. Like, it felt like Cole was just always there in season 4. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, wow, he's just gone for 2 episodes and we're supposed to just like forget about it.
And like the thing is he doesn't even get mentioned either.
Yeah, like they're not even bringing up like, oh, where's Cole? Like, it's just like
He's forgotten. I guess
basically.
I guess these next like these beginning few episodes are a little more page based, which I guess could be part of it. But yeah, no, it is a little weird.
Yeah.
So then we move to the manor, and Paige walks in asking if anyone's home, and we see that Leo is in the living room levitating and meditating, surrounded by orbs. And Paige scares him and he falls to the ground, and she like apologizes and says that the door was unlocked. And Leo says, it usually is, otherwise demons come crashing through and it costs a fortune to fix. as if they're just gonna open the door or something if it's unlocked.
Yeah, the demon's just gonna be like, knock, knock. Oh, it's
Yeah.
unlocked, coming in.
And he says, if you're looking for Phoebe, she's not here. She's at a job interview. And she says, actually, I was looking for you. Seeing that you're a white lighter and I'm part white lighter, I was hoping we could have a white lighter to part white lighter check. And he agrees, and they come in and sit down. And Paige is like, so you have the ability to locate your charges, right? And he's like, sometimes. And she's like, so if you have a sixth sense for locating good, is it possible that I have one for locating evil? And he's like, you think you sensed evil? Then she tells him about the house and how Piper and Phoebe dismissed her. And he says, you want me to talk to them. And she's like, I hate to put you in the middle. And he's like, well, it's part of my job, and says that he will. That's when Phoebe walks in, super upset, slamming the door, and they get up and go over to her.
So, love this little like meditation thing that Leo's doing. I also like that his wife is struggling so much financially, and this is what he spends his time doing.
It's beautiful, really. Like, where'd the whole handyman cover go? Like, he still has other charges that he could be doing that for.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they may have written Cole to be nowhere to be found, but Leo's there in every episode, and he's really not doing much other than just hanging around.
Yeah, not being super helpful, Leo.
But yeah, no, like you were saying, the whole door thing, ridiculous. I do like the way that Paige has this conversation with him, and we kind of see them starting to develop a connection as kind of like white lighter and charge, as well as like them having that connection of both being part white lighter. I like that she brings up this idea that maybe she can sense evil. Though also when he's like, "Oh, sometimes I can sense my charges."
Like,
Yeah,
what do you
we've been
mean?
seeing that lately. It only works sometimes.
Only on occasion. Like, what do you mean?
Only for plot's sake.
Exactly, only when it benefits the episode. All these new rules and regulations that they come up with each episode are just getting better and better.
You know.
But yeah, no, I do like that we get to see, because we saw this with Phoebe and Leo. We saw this with Prue and Leo a little bit, not even as much. But now we get to see kind of that relationship start and grow between Paige and Leo, and it's nice to see him like kind of still having to be that middle ground factor, the one that's like, hey, he's the one we go to when we need to like try to get on the same page about things, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
He's
And I
still
think
got
it
his
also
important role.
like as far as who relies on Leo, because I think part of the reason Prue didn't rely on him as much is because she's always been so hyper independent. I think the other sisters have more of like a desire and kind of like an ability to kind of learn from others and kind of like accept help, whereas that was always really difficult for Prue. So I think that's why she always had a different connection with him than, say, for example, Phoebe does, and we're seeing Paige start to develop here.
Absolutely. It's funny because for both of them, it's like they're the youngest trying to, and it's they go to Leo for their like confusion and difficulties, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I like to see that happening again.
And it does make sense that like a younger sibling would go to someone for advice where an older sibling wouldn't, right? Because they never
Yeah,
had that older figure to ask something for when they were growing up.
exactly.
So then we cut over to the parlor, and Phoebe's like, I am only going to say this once. The real world better start showing me some respect. Otherwise, I'm going to stop saving it every week. And Leo asks her what happened, and she says, I just had the worst job interview for a position that a monkey could fill, provided that the monkey could explain why it needed flexible work hours. Then she turns to Paige and she's like, Why aren't you at work? And Paige is like, It's my lunch break. She's like, You're not still talking about the creepy house, are you? Did you find out any new information? And Leo says, I think it's worth checking out. And Paige smiles, and Phoebe says, Huh, okay, well, let's go. It's not like I need to be at work or anything. And Paige asks if they can meet after she goes to work at 4 and calls for a pen and paper and gives Phoebe the address and thanks Leo and leaves. Then Phoebe asks Leo if he really thinks she's onto something. And he says the important thing is that she does. So I think we should support that. She says, okay, then I'll go change into my work clothes and head over there. And Leo asks if she wants him to come. And she says, Leo, please, this is what I do, and goes upstairs.
So I like this little scene again with Leo being able to kind of convince her, like, hey, it's worth checking out. You have to trust her instincts, things like that, you know? He's such a reasonable person. I feel like the sisters always have that problem where they like don't seem to ever learn to trust each other. Like with everything they've been through, you would think at a certain point they'd like realize, hey, you know, maybe they're onto something.
And it's so funny because sometimes they'll be like, oh, yeah, if someone shows up in our lives, it's obviously because of destiny. Like, that's obviously why we're getting this feeling. And then other times they're like, babe, you need to sleep.
Yeah, literally, like you're just exhausted. Like, come on now.
But I do like the supportiveness here. You know, Phoebe's kind of like sass and anger here makes sense to me. And we see her kind of being like, oh, like I can handle it, whatever, which a little dangerous to just go into something unknown. I think, especially after how much time they spent, what was it, 2 episodes ago, telling Piper she shouldn't be going in blind and just taking risks and things. And now Phoebe's like, well, I'll just go check it out without having any knowledge about what might be going on there.
It's so funny. It's like they learn these lessons that we see one episode and then all of a sudden they're back to square one the next,
Yeah,
you know?
no,
And that's
really.
something they do pretty consistently. I mean, obviously it is for the plot to make it more entertaining, but even so, it's like they never
Yeah,
learn.
they do not. One total side note I have here, I'm loving the turtlenecks in this episode. Like Phoebe's little like blue tank top turtleneck she wore to the interview and like Paige's purple one. Like they look so cute.
Yeah, I love it. I've always loved turtlenecks, except sometimes I feel like I cannot breathe while wearing them.
I don't feel like I have like the right like neck length for them. I feel like they look weird on me, but like I think they're very cute on other people.
Yeah. I've always loved the way they looked on me. I think it like it fits well, but it just like sometimes it's like it feels like I'm being choked.
I get that because I don't even like wearing necklaces because of that. Like I just don't like
Yeah,
having things there.
agreed. What kind of trauma have we been through? Just kidding. Oh god. So then we go to P3 and we see this red-haired girl walk out in a cropped tee that says The Spot. And Piper says, "You're changing the name of the club?" Treat's like, "I mean, you know, that's the plan." And Piper's like, "What's wrong with P3?" And he goes, "Well, we pulled people and most of them thought it was a parking level. I don't even know what it stands for." And she's like, "It stands for Prue, Piper, and Phoebe. We are P3. We were." And then he says the new image needs a new name, but if she's against it, he can stop. And then calls her baby girl again. And she's like, no, just do what you want. And she goes, clearly just very defeated, you know?
Yes. Also, wild that this is like when we think about what P3 is, it's kind of like a music like nightclub type of place, right? So why are the waitresses now dressing like it's Hooters?
That's what I was about to say. Like, they're turning this into like Hooters or a strip club or something. Like, this is, I don't know, it always gave me that kind of more like a jazz lounge kind of nightclub, not like a super hip club party nightclub for all these
Yeah, no, it's like
kids.
100% like an indie music spot. Like it's not
Yeah,
like a, I don't know, like
like it's not like a real like party nightclub for all the young people. It's more like a place where people can go and relax, have some drinks, listen to good music, and you know, it's got the nightclub feel to it though, or the nightclub
yeah.
look. And I like that. Personally, I think that's like way more interesting. I'd be a lot more willing to go back to something like that. Like a place where it's like the strip club. That's something you go like once in a while to party or something, you know? Like who
Yeah.
the hell's gonna want to go there?
That's like, oh, it's my friend's like bachelorette, or like, oh, it's my friend's birthday. We're going there for the night. It's not like every weekend I want to go hang out there.
Exactly. Like that's not gonna, yeah,
I
not
do
gonna
think
work
it's
out
kind
well.
of funny though, like the P3 parking level joke. Like I
Yeah.
think that's funny too, because it's such a like insider to the family thing. So it makes sense that people are kind of like, what the fuck is that? But like at the
Yeah.
same time, we saw the club doing really well. And like every time we see the club, there's always so many fucking people there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, are they struggling?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's doing so bad, but
But
whatever they say.
God's sake, you know.
Yeah, no, the waitress, like, they're pulling out this, like, really hot girl in, like, a skimpy outfit. Like, come on.
Yeah.
So cliche.
Also, why do they have waitresses? They don't really even have like tables or
I don't
like
know.
food, I don't think. Do they have food there?
I don't know. And when we
Oh,
see
actually, I think they ate wings there once, right? So I guess they have like bar food.
uh and when we see the amount of like we're gonna see later in the episode the amount of waitresses that are there, like there have never been that many.
No, there's like 8 tables in the entire club. I don't know why they need like 12 waitresses. Like, I'm a
Yeah,
little confused.
exactly. It makes no sense.
Like, maybe they would need one waitress to go around to the people who are at tables or something, two at most. Like, they did not need more than that.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
then maybe like 2 to 3 bartenders. That seemed like a full staff for that type of place.
It seriously was.
So then we go back to the creepy house, and Phoebe knocks on the door and leans against it. And then it just opens by itself when she kind of steps away. And as one does, she just walks right in. And inside, she's like, "Hello, anybody home?" And we see the old man in the wall. And she starts looking around and picks up a doll. And when she does, she has a premonition of Finn, the house, and some fire. And she drops it and it breaks. And the man yells, "No!" and like takes out his wand and zaps her with the blue electricity. And we see Phoebe shrink down to the size of a doll and then run off.
Little figurines.
Yep.
So now I guess we get the idea of what he's sculpting out of clay,
Yeah.
just molding these women.
It's such a creepy thing.
Yeah. Because that's like really horrendous too. Like that's such a brutal way to die. You're just like trapped in clay and then what, thrown into a furnace or something? Like however they do it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh God. Sounds brutal. So best of luck to Phoebe. Paige was right. I'm sure she realizes that now. I don't know why she didn't wait for Paige to go check out the house, but you know, the sisters, they never learn.
They do not. They do not.
So then it cuts to a little bit later, still in the creepy house, and we see the old man is looking for Phoebe, and she's hiding behind this chair and trying to call for Leo. And then the old man points a flashlight around, and he spots her and tries to go and grab her, but she levitates over his hand. He's like, "Why, you little witch?" And she runs and hides behind the couch, and then he goes to grab the vacuum, be like, "Oh, let's see how long you can last now, you know?"
When he grabbed the vacuum, I cracked up. I totally forgot about that. And I was like, "Oh my God."
I don't know why, but the image of like a demon grabbing a vacuum, like,
It's just so funny. That's your weapon of choice, the vacuum.
yeah, like really. I'm surprised that place even has a vacuum in it. It's got nothing, but it's
No,
got like
literally.
a regular old vacuum there. What are you
Also,
cleaning
didn't the
up?
electricity not work? How the fuck are you gonna use the vacuum?
Yeah, I forgot about that. I don't think cordless vacuums were even a thing at this time.
He has little one of those little handheld Dysons.
Yeah, imagine. Oh my God.
So then we're back at P3, and Paige and Leo orb in like to the back area. And she starts talking about not being used to orbing and how it hurts her stomach. They go over to Piper, and Leo says, "What's with the white gauze? It's worse than up there." And Piper says it was Treat's idea. "What are you guys doing here?" Paige says, "We orbed in." And Piper's like, "Together?" And Paige says that Phoebe never met up with her at the creepy house and they're concerned. And Piper's like, "I thought we decided not to investigate the so called creepy house." And she's like, "Well, I know you didn't think it was anything, but Leo." She's like, "Oh, so you went behind my back and asked Leo." And Leo says, "She didn't go behind your back, and I'm her white lighter too." Piper says, "Right. Well, it's a smart thing to do as a witch, but an annoying thing to do as a sister. So what happened to Phoebe?" And Leo says that he doesn't know and that he checked his radar and she dropped to the tiniest blip. And Piper asks what would make that happen. And he says, I don't know, but I don't like it. And Piper says they should get over there and grabs her jacket. And Paige says, see, I told you something was going on in that house. And Piper's like, okay, let's hold the congratulations until we find Phoebe. And as they're walking out, the workers drop the P3 sign and it breaks. And Leo starts to say something, but Piper says, it's okay. P3 doesn't exist anymore. And she walks out, and we see Paige kind of like look out, looking sad, and then kind of follow after.
That's so heartbreaking.
It really is. It really is.
Like that shit crushed my soul a little bit. Like poor Paige too, especially. Like even from the start, Piper kind of still dismissing her, and even though something is actually wrong with the house, still just kind of not seeing Paige's, like not giving her a like, oh, good looking out, like you found something. You would think as someone who wants her to learn as a witch, like we saw her giving her pop quizzes and everything, that she would be kind of a little more proud or appreciative of like, oh, okay, she is trying to work on things like that.
Exactly, because it was literally just last episode. She's like, Paige, you need to take witchcraft seriously. You need to train. You need to do this. And now this episode, she's like, Paige, what the fuck?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. It's just I think Piper's still a little bit like, in denial over having Paige in their life. And not so much because of Paige, but just because of the pain of it all. And obviously it's causing issues in their relationship building. And here she doesn't even seem to acknowledge like her saying that about P3 not existing anymore, like how that could be hurtful to Paige.
Yeah, because I think for Piper here, right? P3 is really representing like Prue, Piper, Phoebe, but like for us, at least for me, it's always been the power of three, right? Which now
Yeah,
is Paige. And yes, Paige is never going to replace Prue, right?
of
As
course.
Piper's sister. But I do get how for Paige this could feel like such a rejection, right? It's this idea of like, well, yes, I have this new sister, but my other sister's gone and I don't care about this anymore. And it's
Yeah,
just really sad.
it is. I wonder like if we ever get to see kind of Paige feeling like, oh, I wish I got to meet Prue. Like I wonder if we ever get an episode seeing how she wishes that she met her other sister, because she's got this whole other sister that is dead that she's never gotten to meet. And that's like something that we never have talked about? Like,
Yeah, like it's like she'll never get the chance to get to know Prue, right?
and vice
Um,
versa.
yeah. And that's really gotta be sad. And I think there's part of her that's probably so curious about Prue and wants to know everything about her. But because of what Phoebe and Piper are going through with this fresh loss, she obviously can't bring up those questions to them, right? So that's got to
Exactly.
be difficult as well.
Yeah. I wonder if we ever do get to see kind of that side of things. Like if there's a time where they maybe reminisce on Prue or something for Paige's sake too?
Hmm.
Because like I feel like Paige should get to know her a little more.
Yeah.
But I guess like you said, she doesn't feel right bringing that up to them. So maybe the best way for her to get to know her fourth or her third sister is like through the witchcraft?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I guess we'll see.
I also do like kind of like Piper's little like annoyance here about Paige going to Leo though, and kind of being like, oh, like you guys came together, like, oh, you're teaming up on me. Like I like that because I feel like
Yeah.
I'd be the same way if I was Piper. I'd be like,
Yeah.
you're my husband, so you should be on my side. The
Right,
fuck.
exactly. Fair enough. I can definitely agree with that. So then we move back to the creepy house, and the old man is trying to vacuum up Phoebe while she's holding on to the couch fabric for dear life. And then Finn walks in, and the old man tells him to close the door. And Finn's like, what are you gonna do when you find her? Same thing he did to the other one. And then the guy stops vacuuming and says, don't ask questions. Then Phoebe walks out and watches as they go over to the table. And the old man says that he has an idea. Then Phoebe notices the open door, but then she sees this woman in clay mouthing for help that the old man put on the shelf. And Finn notices the door is open and closes it. And then Phoebe looks at the woman again, realizing that there's an innocent in there, that she needs to
Yeah.
save.
Mhm. So we get the idea here that Finn may or may not be fully aware of what's going on. I'm not really sure. He's obviously somehow controlled by this older man, it seems like.
Yeah,
And of course, we also get the idea here that we're setting up the idea that Phoebe knows about the innocent and she's still alive. So obviously, Phoebe's new goal will be to save her.
exactly. He knew that she couldn't resist.
Exactly. So then we're outside the house and we see Piper's car pull up. And Paige says that she has the shiver again. And Piper says, well, you don't have to be a super witch to know that this house is creepy. And Leo says there's a motorcycle in the driveway, so someone must be home. Piper thinks that they should knock and freeze him, but Leo's worried that she might accidentally blow him up. So she suggests that he orbs in, but he's worried that if it's not supernatural, he'd just be exposing them. And then Paige says that she can get Finn out of the house and then they can go and snoop around. And Leo thinks that's a good plan. And Piper's like, are you siding with Paige now? And he's like, hey, there's no sides. And yes. And Paige is like, look, I know I'm new to magic, but the only way to change that is to allow me to get some experience. And Piper says, I'm just trying to protect you. Paige says, that's nice, but you're protecting me, maybe hurting Phoebe. Now I got her into this, let me help get her out of it. And Piper says, okay, but until we know who this Finn guy is and what he does, I don't want you alone with him. Take him to P3, or I mean, the spot. And she says, got it. And she unwraps a lollipop, and Piper asks what it's for, and she says, it's a lure. And she gets out of the car, and Piper's like, do not go into this house. Do you hear me? And she walks away, and Piper says, it's like talking to a wall. And Leo says, she's got the Hallowell hearing. And Piper looks at him pissed.
Absolutely love this whole scene. The dynamic between the three of them is absolutely cracking me up. Like,
Yeah, no, it's so quippy. It's so well delivered. It's so well written. I love this.
me too. So again, I like Paige's idea the best. I like the little like I said, the dynamic, the wittiness, the banter between them all is working really well for me here. And aside from that, I'm looking forward to seeing her like lure out Finn and maybe what we can kind of figure out between them
Yeah.
about what his role is in this whole old man's creepy doll collection thing. So
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of Paige having what we've always recognized that Phoebe has, which is kind of like this really clever, like really like street smart type of attitude and like this way of
mhm.
kind of like working people and using like her looks and her charm to get the things she wants, which I really enjoy seeing. And I really like the way that she plays up on that.
Absolutely. We see that like she does have that in her that that Halliwell instinctive gene and that, I'm going to go for it and protect others. And she knows how to go about it. She's smart about it. She knows to use her looks. She knows that she can come up with a creative idea. I think that we see that sometimes Paige has that faith in herself and other times she doesn't quite see it. And I can't wait to see that kind of that confidence build in her the same way we saw in the other sisters.
Yeah, definitely.
So now inside the creepy house, Phoebe levitates up to the shelf where the woman in clay is. And she says, that's one good thing about being so small. I'm so light, I can kind of fly. Can you talk? And the woman just looks at her but can't open her mouth. And then Phoebe tells her to close her eyes and she kicks her free from the clay. And then she tells her that they need to run before Gamble sees them. No clue how she knows the guy's name. And they start to go, but he captures them in a coffee can before they can hop off the shelf. And then he turns to Finn and says, I knew a witch could never resist saving an innocent. And that's when Paige knocks on the door. And Gamble's like, now what? Another girl. Get her inside. Go, get her. And Finn's like, maybe we should just let them all go. And Gamble says, since when did you develop a conscience? I never gave you one. And then he tells him to go and he grabs Phoebe and the innocent and puts them into a box and closes it.
Interesting way to kind of like show the difference of their powers in this side, which I mean, spoiler to later in the episode, but we'll see the different ways that kind of being shrunk affects their powers later on. But for Phoebe, we get this idea that, oh, because she's so tiny now, like her levitation power is elevated. Like you said, no idea how she knows Gamel's name. Did he introduce himself to her as he was trying to vacuum her up? Like,
I have no idea. I couldn't tell. Like I was trying to think because I was wondering that, but I didn't even go back. But I was wondering if when Finn first walked in that last scene where she was like hiding, if maybe he called him by his name, but
he
I
did
don't
not,
remember
because I
that.
would have noticed if he did, and
Yeah.
I would have been like, oh, okay, that's how she knows his name. But like,
Yeah, no clue. He's got a name tag.
she
So
just like remembers the Book of Shadows so well that she recognized the picture that we'll see of him later, and she was like, ah, Gamel.
this must be him. Precisely. Again, I guess just plot's sake. And then we see, of course, that Finn is, I guess, sort of having some sort of
Frankenstein's monster?
emotions, something like that. And he's like feeling bad a little bit, feeling guilty about this whole situation, and I guess sort of developing this conscience that he was never given.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
So then we go to the doorway, and Finn opens the door for Paige, and she's like, hi, remember me? The girl with the melons? From the supermarket melons. And he laughs and he's like, yeah, I remember. What brings you here? She says, let's just say I got tired of waiting for you to show up on my doorstep. He's like, I'm sorry. She's like, look, if we're going to go out, the first thing you need to know about me is that I don't play games. I see what I want and I go for it. Do you have a problem with that? And he says, are you always this aggressive with guys? She says, just the ones I like. He says, why don't you come in? And she kind of like looks around and he's like, something wrong? She's like, just the old cliche. My mother told me never to go into strangers' houses. He's like, come on, what are you afraid of? And she looks back and we see Piper in the car going, don't do it. And then we see Gamel in the wall going, do it. And then she starts to step inside, but then Finn says that they should go out instead. And they leave on his motorcycle. And back in the car, we see Leo say, the lore worked. And Piper say, barely.
Again, love this whole situation. Paige coming out like this, all aggressive. I'm kind of loving it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it is sexy. I get why he's drawn to it.
Right? Like I like the side of her. That shit makes me want to go show up to some random guy's store and do. Not that I think that would work so well, because I don't know. Like, don't get me wrong, it sounds hot like here, but I feel like I'd be like, first of all, how do you know where I live?
Yeah, no, there are some questions here because, like, you met at the supermarket, so, like, you just know where his house is, and you're like, oh, you didn't show up at my door. Like, why would he know where you live?
Yeah, like what did you follow him home or something, or give each other your address? Talk
These
some
are
more
some
about
kind of
melons?
like stalkerish tendencies, but you know what? I guess because Paige is a 10, it works for her.
True. And then Piper being like that protective mom, I swear.
I know. But also, it was just so fucking funny the way they have her like, don't do it. And they get like, do it in the
Yeah,
wall. Like,
it was perfect.
the comedy, the camp, high tier. Loved it.
Absolutely.
Like, this is when Charmed is at its best, when it doesn't take itself too seriously and it really plays up like kind of the dramatics of the genre. Like, I love it. And I think it's so funny.
Yeah, like it can definitely like they throw in a little comedy every now and again, and it works really well. It makes it just perfect and so much more entertaining to watch.
Exactly.
So then back inside the house, Gamble comes out of the wall and looks at Phoebe and the blonde girl in a box. And then he hears the jingle as Piper and Leo orbin, and he looks over. So he goes back to hide in the wall. And Phoebe starts calling for Piper and bangs on the box, but she can't hear her because she's too tiny. And then Piper and Leo start looking around. She finds a cabinet full of these creepy dolls, and Leo goes to look for Phoebe upstairs, and Piper walks right past the girls. And she steps closer to the holes in the wall where Gamble is hiding. And Leo comes back and says that there's nothing upstairs. And they decide that they need to go home and check the book, hoping they won't need the power of 3 for this. And they orb out. And then Gamble's like, well, 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 the power of 3. So you're not just a witch, but a charmed one. Nothing will make me happier than to collect you all. And then he reaches down and grabs the girls. This poor blonde is probably so confused, like all this shit happening. She's got no clue about magic or anything. Like,
No, literally, she's just like, what the fuck? I guess
yeah,
like somewhere off screen, Phoebe explained to her what was going on, but like,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
kind of had to. But
But
yeah, no.
overall, I mean, I think this scene really works. It's kind of that whole like Scooby-Doo, like going in and out of different doors type of moment because they
Uh-huh.
are right there, but they don't see each other. And it's like, ooh,
Yeah, seriously, I love it.
it's really well done. And then I think the reveal worked. Like it didn't feel too exposition-y for Piper to be like, oh, I hope we don't need the power of 3. Like I liked that that's how he figured out who they were. That worked for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The subtle giving up information.
Exactly. So then we come back from commercial and we're still inside the house, and Phoebe and the woman are both in clay. And Gamble says, when your clay hardens, I'll fire up the kiln. And once you're in the kiln, there'll be nothing left to save. And he leaves and tells them that he'll be back. And Phoebe's like, okay, good. Now that he's gone, I can focus on getting us out of here. Although I do have to tell you, I am not having the best day of my life. It began with an interview where a woman made me feel this big, and now I actually am this big. And next up is being baked. And she whined. She's like, that's just my roundabout way of saying, don't panic. I'm going to get us out of here. I'm going to turn this day around really slowly because like the clay is starting to harden.
Mhm. I love this little scene here, like Phoebe just Phoebe just kind of going on a little rant, her little spiel, and then like slowly hardening, but determined like this is going to be fixed.
Yeah,
But
no,
there's just
literally.
absolutely nothing she can do.
I love it because I feel like so frequently this season we see Phoebe really, really like keeping it together most of the time. But here she like gives herself that kind of like moment to lose it. And then she's like, okay, okay, back on track. Like I really like the
Yeah.
way that she's been doing that. I think it really fits her character and kind of everything she's trying to be this season. So that really works for me as well.
Yes, definitely very Phoebe of her.
Also, though, like, where did Gamble need to go? Confusing why he needed to leave.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder what his plan was. Maybe to go after them before they come after him?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Questionable.
I guess we will find out, hopefully.
We shall.
So now back at the manor, up in the attic, Piper and Leo find Gamble in the book with a drawing of him and Finn. And Leo reads that it says, known for collecting one-of-a-kind figurines. I wonder what he gets out of that. And Piper says, well, speaking for my great-aunt Sylvia, who collects Hummels, when they have a hard time dealing with real people, figurines can be their best friends. And he says, yeah, but being socially awkward doesn't land you in the Book of Shadows. And Piper's like, so what does? He says, well, apparently he went up against a witch in the 70s. A spell was cast to make him as hideous on the outside as he was on the inside. And he points to the drawing of the old man. And then Piper says, does it say what he did to deserve that? He says, no, it doesn't make any sense either. I mean, we saw this guy, pointing to Finn, and says that he still looks the same. She's like, so what does that mean? That Gamble found a way to break the curse and change his name to Finn? And Leo's like, I don't know, but I'm guessing the guy with Paige does. And she's like, well, then we need to find Paige and hope that she's not in trouble so that we can find Phoebe and hope that she's not in trouble. And he says, well, I wouldn't worry about Paige. She's in a public place. Nobody's going to hurt her at the spot. Ew, I like absolutely hate that name.
Yeah, it's a bad name. Also, honestly, if my name was Gamble, I would change it to Finn too. So fair enough.
Me too. Can't argue with that logic. Again, where they throw in the little comedy here, like Piper always with her sarcasm, like, oh, my great aunt Sylvia. And like,
I know. And I love like Leo's response. Yeah, but being socially awkward isn't going to put you in the Book of Shadows.
yeah, exactly. Like they just work so well. I love it.
I also love though, like when the Book of Shadows like conveniently only has a little bit of information. Like it's like, oh, I cursed him, but you're not going to tell us why or what he does. You're not going to be more specific.
Yeah, figure it out for yourself though.
It's like, here's a little hint.
Yeah, hope you like a guessing game.
Hope you
X
love a murder mystery.
X marks the spot type of thing. Oh my
They're
god.
like clue number one.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, no, I like the confusion from them. It does make sense that they're like trying to piece it together but can't quite figure it out. And honestly, we still don't even quite know exactly what happened with, Gamble and Finn. So I'm looking forward to hopefully finding that out.
Yes, me too. I feel like it's one of those things where, like, obviously I knew where the episode was going, but if I didn't, like, what I would be thinking about the two of them.
Exactly. Yeah, I was definitely thinking the same thing. I mean, it makes like that's the thing. I see when we figure out what it is, we can see like, oh, the hints in the episode, like him dealing with Clay, the thing in the Book of Shadows, everything. But like, could I just be saying that because I already know the answer? Or like,
Exactly. I'm like, was it just obvious because I knew what was going to happen? Or like, if I
yeah,
was a first time viewer, would I be like, oh, of course, he created him? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, like somebody's gotta let us know who's a first time viewer.
definitely. So then we go to Paige's apartment, and Paige and Finn walk in. They are not in a public place.
Dun dun.
And she starts like cleaning up her apartment, saying how she wasn't expecting anyone to come over. And he tells her that he likes the place. And she's like, really? It's a shoebox compared to yours. He's like, I'm really glad I didn't bring you in. You know, this is the first time a girl has ever invited me back to her place. She's like, well, I just thought the club was kind of noisy and we could hang out here. And he like goes to kiss her and she stops him like, damn, he was just trying to fuck.
Yeah, seriously. Man's just trying to lay it down.
And she was like, first, actually, I have a question. And he was like, about what? And she was like, about your house. He's like, I don't really want to talk about that. And he walks away and sits down. And she's like, if something bad is going on there, I need for you to tell me about it. She's like, please, my sister could be in trouble. He says, I don't know much. It's only recently that I've started asking questions myself. She's like, asking who? He's like, Gamble. She's like, what's his deal? He says, I'm not sure. She's like, well, how do you know him? And he says, he made me. And she's like, made you? What is that, like a mafia thing? And he's like, no. And he untucks his shirt and takes her hand and asks her to feel his stomach. And he's like, I'm not like you. And she's like, oh my God.
The drama here.
And then when we find out what it is, like, I'm just like, really? That was that dramatic of a reveal?
I was the same way. Oh my god, no, that was mad funny though. I can't lie. Oh god, that's good.
Like, hang on me. I gotta tell you something.
Yeah. Check this out. Oh my god. Like, it really did crack me up.
It was so
There's
funny.
like this whole thing is like I don't think they even meant for this. They didn't mean for this scene to have so much comedy in it, but from like beginning to end, it was just like this everything they're saying is so dumb. Like the whole, oh, it's a shoebox compared to yours. Like maybe size wise, but look at that motherfucker's house. I wouldn't be
No,
embarrassed to
literally.
show him mine. Are you kidding
Like,
me?
that man literally lives in the local dump. So,
Yeah, seriously. Like
and
Jesus
also,
Christ.
like, Paige's apartment is kind of fucking huge for like a studio. Like, it's enormous.
Yeah, it's really cute too. I like her apartment.
It is cute.
And then him being like, this is the first time a girl has ever invited me back to her place. Like, yeah, because you lure all the girls in to kill them.
Like, I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, a hypothesis. Does that mean that Finn's a virgin because like Gamble always just kills the girls, so he never actually gets it in, and he was about to finally get it in, and then it was like, oh, Paige said we gotta talk.
Yeah. But first, let's discuss. Let's have a chat. And also, like, what was his plan gonna be if he hadn't said anything and they were just gonna hook up? And she's like, well, I mean, Nice dick, but where's your belly button? Like, what
He
was
was
gonna be
hoping
his
she'd be
excuse?
so distracted by the D, that fire D, that she wouldn't even notice.
Like, seriously, this shit makes no sense. Oh my god. Yeah, no, that scene
Maybe
was
he was
actually
gonna be like, we have to do it with our clothes on. Don't take off your shirt.
that over the pants action. Jesus Christ. Oh god. No, that actually, yeah, that whole scene was like pure gold. Because it just is so dumb.
Also, like, what is that, a mafia thing? Like,
Yeah. Like, please, hon.
is it 1920s Chicago? Like, I'm confused about the setting.
It sure makes no sense. Oh god, I love it.
I also do, I guess the one thing I will say is it's really interesting the way that he just like so quickly like gives up Gamble and just tells her everything.
Yeah, seriously. Like, doesn't even, like, he just assumes that she's good and knows what she's talking about. Like, I don't.
No, literally.
So then we go to the spot, and girls are dancing on the bar, the waitresses, and the place is packed. And Piper and Leo walk in, and Piper's like, I just got a set of creepy shivers myself. And he's like, now I'm glad you changed the name. And she's like, oh God, look at the waitresses. Oh no, don't look. They're practically removing their spots. And then Leo looks and, and he's like, can you do that in public? And she tells him to go look for Paige, and she goes towards the back, and this bouncer tells her that she can't go in there. And she's like, excuse me? And he says, it's a VIP area. And she's like, oh, you're assuming because I'm not tall, tattooed, or big breasted that I'm not important. She's like, that's a bad assumption because, see, I own this club, which makes me a VVVIP. And then Treat comes over and tells him that she's good. And he starts telling her how the crowd is fly. And she asks if he's seen Paige. And he says that she left because it was too noisy. And then she grabs Leo, who is like sandwiched between these two dancing girls, and says Paige took Finn to her loft. And they go behind a couch where two people are making out and they just orb out together.
So, how did she know that Paige went to her loft? All she knew was that she left.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess you can imagine like where else would she have gone, because obviously in this universe no other place exists besides P3, their apartments and jobs. Like,
True, true. They never go anywhere else.
and of course the station.
Ah, yes, the police station, of course.
Yes, can't forget about that. Yeah, no, not sure how she knew that, but again, this whole like the little comedy of like the girls dancing there and the whole nightclub scene, I hated it too. And the comedy with the VIP, the bouncer, I liked that. It was very funny to
Yeah.
me.
We could be VIPs.
Yeah, we like, you're tall and tattooed, I'm tattooed and big breasted. I mean, it works for us, shit.
There we go. We're in VIPs.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
It's so crazy though, because like that actually was like the club scene of the 2000s. Like, I don't know how much you know about like nightlife in that time period, but like it was very like it wasn't like today where like you could just go to a nightclub and get in, like show up with a promoter or whatever. Like bouncers were mean. Like you would show up at the door and they'd be like, "You're too short, no. You're too fat, no." Like they would just turn people away at the door because they
Jesus.
didn't like how they looked, and that was like part of their job.
Yeah, that's crazy. It was a lot. It was an era more about superficial needs,
Yeah.
I've noticed. It is really funny though, but that was like the era of clubs, you know?
It was. Like that's what kind of like when people think back on like the height of nightlife, it really is that era that they think of.
Exactly.
Before kind of like phones and all that kind of thing started kind of shifting the dynamics of what goes on. Because even like celebrities used to go to clubs because it used to be like, oh, they could go and hang out, but now they go to a club and they're gonna get a million photos taken of them.
Exactly.
Whereas 25, 30 years ago, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, partially wish I got to experience that, but also like it was so like toxic. Like, that partially I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think I needed that in my life, honestly.
Yeah. got enough toxicity as it is.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know what I would do if I walked somewhere and they were like, God, no, you're too short and too fat, get out of here. I'd be like, oh my God.
No, like it would be that would be awful. And like imagine you're there with your friend and they're like, her, yes, you know. Bye.
Yeah,
And
that
your
I would,
friend goes in without you. Like it's like
that's so fucked. Oh my God.
so then we're at Paige's apartment and Piper and Leo walk in. They see that Finn has his shirt off and Paige is kneeling in front of him and we don't see her like face or anything. And Piper's like, Paige. Paige like moves her head to the side to like look at them. She's like, "What are you doing here?" And Leo's like looking away. And Piper's like, "This is ridiculous. It's like dealing with a teenager." And Paige gets up. She's like, "I'm just examining him." And Piper's like, "Okay, first of all, you should not have left the club." She's like, "Piper." She's like, "Second of all, you should not be playing doctor with the demon boy." She's like, "Piper, Piper, he has no belly button." And she looks at his stomach and he like closes his shirt all embarrassed. And Paige is like, I can explain. First of all, we left your club because it sucks now, okay? Anytime you try to be that hip, it ain't hip. And second of all, Finn has no belly button because he wasn't born. And he says, I was created out of clay. Leo says, in Gamel's own image, he must be a golem. And Paige says, I don't know the technical term, but I do know that he needs protection from the demon that made him. And Piper asks where Gamel is, and Finn says that he's at the house. Leo says that they were just there and didn't see him, and Finn mentions that he has a hiding place. Piper says, could he be hiding our sister Phoebe there? And Finn says, no, he probably shrunk her. That's what he does. He takes his wand and he shrinks women for his collection. And Piper says, oh God, the figurines. That's why they're each one of a kind. Okay, we have to get back there. We have to find Phoebe. Finn says if Gamel's waiting for them, he'll shrink them all. And Piper says, does he still trust you? And Finn says, yeah. She's like, okay, then come with us. You would go in first and distract him. And Paige is like, no, Piper, we can't use Finn as a minesweeper. Besides, isn't he an innocent? And Piper pulls her aside. She's like, actually, Paige, innocents tend to be real. She's like, listen, we have to get to Phoebe, but first we should try to go by your house and check the Book of Shadows, see if there's a spell to undo shrinking. We'll bring Finn with us. Piper says they don't have time for that, and Paige says they can't go in unprepared. Piper says unprepared might be our best shot right now. Leo, what do you think? He says, I think you need to stop turning to me and start trying to figure out a way to listen to each other. Piper, you don't listen to Paige's ideas. And Paige like smiles. And then he's like, and Paige, you don't listen to Piper's advice. And Piper kind of like gives her like this sassy look. And he's like, I think you guys need to figure out a way to work as partners. And Piper says, we're partners. And he says, equal partners. And Paige says, well, listen, can we do that tomorrow? Right now, we actually need your help. And he orbs out, and they're both annoyed and decide to flip a coin to decide. So Piper calls heads. It's heads, but Paige orbs it to tails and then shows her and says that they're going to the manor.
Yeah, she's like, I want fair and square. So, a couple of things here. First of all, absolutely hilarious, the beginning where it looks like she's like doing some sloppy shit, and they're like making a whole scene out of it. Second of all, this whole explanation that he gives, why didn't he tell Paige that this entire time?
No, literally.
Like, oh, he shrunk your sister. Like, why did you wait till they showed up before you said that, hey, your sister might be dying right now? Like, what?
No, literally, like your sister might be getting cooked. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. But anyways, check out my stomach. Like,
Yeah, like let's just like play with my belly button that doesn't exist.
yeah, it's so stupid. But aside from that, the whole little, piecing it together where he made Finn out of his own image and is using him to lure these women in to create these figurines for him. It works for me, the whole like idea of that.
Yeah, I think the way Piper kind of figures everything out really works. Leo, you're being a little messy, just orbing out here like this. Phoebe is clearly in danger, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna let you guys fight it out. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Have fun with that, you guys. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing what new information they think they're going to come up with by going to the house and checking the Book of Shadows again.
Yes. And I also like the way that Paige is very much still not listening to Piper, right? Because she like literally cheats so that they do what she wants to do.
Exactly. Love it.
Such younger sister energy.
Oh yeah.
I do like that they're fighting like sisters though. Like it feels very like realistic to me the way they're kind of going at each other here.
Yeah, like the whole sibling rivalry.
Exactly.
It
This
feels
is
very Prue and Phoebe to me in the early season.
it definitely does. It definitely brings me back to those times for
Yeah.
sure.
So then back at the manor, they walk in and Finn asks for some water and starts walking to the kitchen. And then Gamel pops out from the living room and shoots him with this red laser and like kills him. And then the laser turns into this blue electricity thing and he shrinks the sisters before they can, do anything to him.
So I guess we found out where Gamble had to go, but how the fuck did he know where they lived?
That's what I was thinking. Like, how did he know that? I don't get it.
But you know what? Good thing they always leave the door unlocked in case demons need to get in.
Yeah, at least he didn't break the door down. Like, what the hell?
Like at least if he had to break the door down, they would have known someone was there.
Exactly. Would have made a little more sense. Maybe he followed them,
But
but
then
they
was he
orbed.
everywhere they were? Yeah, they orbed.
But then that means their car was left outside of his house.
Well, that's why they had to orb from P3 because their car is still at Gamble's house.
Like, what the hell? This should be making no sense sometimes.
Yeah, because they drove, then they orbed again.
And then, yeah. And then what happened? Like,
Maybe they walked to Paige's house. I don't really know.
How did Gamel get there? Does he have a car?
Well,
There's
there
been
was
no
only a
signs that he can.
motorcycle in the driveway, and Finn took that, so maybe he walked.
Could be. Or we can assume that maybe he broke into their car.
Ah, hotwired it with his mafia skills.
Yeah.
And
Saw the GPS address and went to their house. It was nice of him
Mia,
to
it's
return the car.
2001. There's no GPS.
Oh shit, you're right. Then I don't know. Follow the
Theory
tire
thrown
tracks.
out.
Yeah, debunked.
He saw the map quest, and the origin address was the manor.
Exactly, that had to be it.
So he retraced the steps.
To return their car to them.
Of course, because he is a kind citizen,
Yes, a gentleman, if you will.
a gentleman, and a scholar.
Yes.
So then we go to the creepy house, and all three sisters are in play on the shelf. And Gamble grabs the blonde woman and says it's time to fire up the kiln, telling Phoebe that she's next. And Piper says, "At least we came for you." And Phoebe like growls. And she's like, "Phoebe, Paige and I are here now. We have the power of three. Can you say a spell?" And it's clear she can't talk. So Piper tells Paige that they need to go over their options. And she's like, "Options? We have two. We're screwed and we're more screwed." Piper says, "We don't need negativity. We need solutions." She says, "Well, I'm sorry. I've never been shrunk and covered in clay before." Piper says, "Hey, you wanted to be partners, so work with me here. Or you're right, we are screwed." And she asks if Piper can blast her way out, and she says she tried, but she can't move her hands. Then Paige says that maybe she could call for something, but what would help? And what's the point of having powers if you can't use them? And Piper says, "What about orbing?" And she says, "Would Leo hear us?" And she says, "No, you can orb." She says, "Only in the same place." And Piper says, "Well, that might work. The clay's still wet enough. It might collapse if you leave for a second." And Phoebe agrees. She says, "One problem. I've never been able to orb at will before." And Piper says, "That doesn't mean you can't. Just concentrate and relax." And this is no time for concentration, Piper.
Seriously.
She's like, "Close your eyes, take a deep breath, feel the magic rising from a place of strength. Feel it building and building. Paige, you're our only hope." and Paige orbs in and out, and the clay breaks, and she's just kind of dusty. And then she breaks the sisters free, and Phoebe tells Piper to freeze him so he can't cook Claudia. So we finally have a name for her. And Piper tries, but her power won't work because he's too big. And Paige tries to call for the wand, and the first time it doesn't work, but then it does. And he notices just as they get it. And Piper blows up the end to give it a spark, and they shoot it at Gamel, who becomes tiny. And Piper is able to freeze him now. And Phoebe says that the good thing about being in clay all day was she had time to think of a spell. So she says it, and they repeat it, and he vanquishes, and they turn back to normal size, and the shelf breaks as they're like falling down. And Claudia comes back to normal size too, and she's like, "How did you do that?" And Phoebe says, "The power of three." And Piper says, "The power of point three," and they all laugh.
I did like this whole little vanquish scene, where they're all up there and Gamel thinks that he's won, you know, Phoebe not being able to talk and Piper finally having a little faith in Paige there. Absolutely loved the way it all turned out.
Yeah, I really liked that moment of Piper believing in Paige. It was kind of bringing me back to last episode when Piper kind of like took in the persona of the Zen master, and she's now like kind of giving like Paige that like concentrate, meditate, like think
Yeah,
about it. I
you
thought that
can
was
do
really well
this.
done. And
Absolutely, I agree.
it showed what we've wanted to see all episode, right? Which is Piper being that supportive older sister as opposed to the one constantly rejecting Paige's ideas and making her feel inadequate as a witch and as a sister.
Absolutely. Definitely something she needs to learn to do a little more often.
Yes.
But yeah, no, the vanquish definitely worked for me as well. Them kind of all working together to do the, spark, and then Phoebe having the vanquish come up in her head, or the spell, I mean. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too. Though I like how they're just like openly talking about the power of three in front of Claudia. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Leo's gonna do a little voodoo shit to make her forget.
I don't
Who
know. I feel
knows?
like that hasn't come up in so long that the show forgot that was an option.
True. Oh my god. So then we go to the spot where I guess they always end up, the club, at the end of the episode, and a band is playing, and Piper walks through the crowd and finds her sisters and Leo and says, "What do you guys think of the spot?" And Phoebe says, "Well, the club scored Dave Navarro. That's pretty impressive." And Leo's like, "I still can't get used to the white gauze." And Piper's like, "Well, you don't have to. I told Treat that I can't do it. Paige is right. It's trying way too hard to be hip, which means it's 5 minutes away from being 5 minutes ago." And they all smile and walk to their table in the back and sit down. And then they all have sparkling water and clink glasses to the old. And Paige looks sad, and Phoebe asks her what's wrong. And she's like, "Well, the last time I was here, I was with Finn. How do you guys get over these things?" And Piper says, "You don't, but you learn with experience that you can't dwell on the losses. You kind of have to." Paige says, "Harden your heart." And she says, "Protect your heart. Unfortunately, it's a fact of our lives that sometimes the good comes with a little sadness." And then Paige nods, and Leo says, "There's a lot of good too." And Phoebe says, "There was a lot of good. I mean, my skin looks fabulous." And they all laugh. Piper's like, "And now that we've been 5 inches tall, I'll never complain about my height again." And then turns to Paige and says, "And nor will I doubt your instincts again." And Paige says, "Thank you." And Leo says, "Okay, then there's just one more thing that we need to tie up." And he grabs Piper's hand.
So I really like this scene. The reason I included in my notes that they were drinking sparkling water, I'll just call this out now because it's something I also want to keep an eye on. Someone pointed out in something I saw online that after Paige comes into the show, the sisters in their ending scenes are usually not drinking alcohol anymore because Paige doesn't drink. And so that's something I want to keep an eye on throughout the show.
Wow, I never noticed that. That's sweet though, if that's the
Yeah.
reason. Yeah, I like that. Couldn't be me, but good for them.
I know we go out, I don't drink, and you're like turning up. So
I know. I'm like, "Chess, order one and I'll have both." I swear to God. Oh god, but that's funny. But yeah, no, I do really like this scene too. I like kind of Paige having her first innocent lost and them kind of supporting her and being like, hey, these things happen. It's just, it sucks, but it is something we do have to get used to. But, we're all here to go through it together.
Exactly.
Um,
And that's kind of where that sisterhood and that strength comes in, right? Like when one of them, because we've seen each of them have really hard losses with an innocent. The one that stands out most to me is when Piper lost the doctor in season 2 and
yeah,
had that major breakdown.
absolutely. And I'm curious to see what Leo's up to
Me too. Me too.
at the end here.
I also think there's a definite growth overall in kind of the Paige and Piper relationship here, which I feel like we've been seeing in the last few episodes, but then we'll start the episode back with them kind of like going at each other again.
Mhm.
So I wonder if next episode they'll still be in a good place or if we'll see them kind of struggling again at the
Yeah, I'm
beginning
definitely,
and then good by the end. Because I feel like that's kind of becoming the pattern of these episodes is they're butting heads at the beginning of the episode, they're good at the end, and then next episode we go back.
yeah, I'm definitely curious to see that as well.
So then we go to our final scene of the episode, and we're in the alleyway behind the spot. And they ask what Leo's looking for, and he says something important. He goes over like through the garbage and finds the P3 sign, and Paige is like, broken glass. He's like, broken glass that needs healing. And he pulls it out and looks at Piper and is like, it's up to you. And she says, can you do it? And he nods. She says, well, then do it. And he heals the sign and it gets put back together and starts like lighting up, even though it's not plugged into anything. And the sisters stand together, and Piper says, looks like P3's back. And they all smile.
I love that. What a beautiful ending.
It's a very cute ending.
I really did love this. That had to make Paige feel so much like more welcome.
Exactly. It's really sweet. And it's that idea for us that, like, the sisters are healing, right? They're being able to accept their new destiny, the new sisterhood, this new stage of their lives. And even though
Absolutely.
Prue will never be forgotten,
They can
they
move
do
forward.
have to start to move forward. Exactly.
Yeah. And I like that. We're kind of like ending an era, starting a new one.
Exactly. Overall thoughts on the episode?
I've always liked this episode a lot. I know we did point out a lot of like flaws and inconsistencies, but I mean, I feel like we get that anywhere you look in any show. But I did feel that this was kind of an important one for the beginning of the relationship between Piper and Paige for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, some of the points in their relationship that come up in this episode, I feel are redundant. I don't
Yeah.
know that this is a super necessary episode in the season. I think it's a very enjoyable episode. I think it's funny. I like watching it, but I don't know that it would be in my top most likely. Like I would probably rank
Right.
this one a little lower in the end. Not to spoil what's coming up or anything, but I think it's an enjoyable episode, but not necessarily one that's pushing any major season long arcs or anything along.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. It's definitely more of a monster of the week episode, more about Paige I don't know, Paige kind of fighting her first battle in a way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kind of her first I discovered a demon moment.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
God, had to have it eventually.
Exactly. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to reach out to us or follow us on social media, we're on Instagram and TikTok at rewitched_pod. Or you could send us an email to rewitched.pod@gmail.com. Either way, we appreciate you listening and hope you'll join us back next time for season 4, episode 6, A Night to Remember.